The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed during this or any broadcast belong solely to our guests or our hosts. These broadcasts do not represent or reflect the views of their employers, sponsors, or affiliated organizations.
Welcome to the Flipboard EDU podcast with your host, William Jeffrey, where we collaborate, communicate, and educate with the greatest educators in the world on Flipboard. Let's start the show.
Welcome back, Flipboard fam. This is your favorite coach, Coach Jeffrey. And in 2005, the largest Category 5 hurricane ever recorded in the Gulf of Mexico destroyed the city of New Orleans, Louisiana. Hurricane Katrina displaced thousands of families and caused over 1,800 deaths. Many students, teachers, and families were displaced during that tragic event. At that time, it was the largest natural disaster and displacement of families to affect the United States. Sherman Batiste was one of those students who came to Texas. He overcame poverty, adversity, and found support from principals and coaches to complete his education. So even before social-emotional education was a buzzword, his varsity football coach and mentor, Dennis Brandley, applied some of those same techniques, which Sherman credits for his current success in teaching. Sherman Batiste is the Fort Bend ISD Teacher of the Year. Sherman also graduated from Texas A&M University, Kingsville, with a master's degree in sociology. So in this episode, we discuss how relationship building is at the core of teaching and learning. We also discuss how facing adversity can be transformed into motivation to strive for excellence in teaching. So like we always do about this time, let's collaborate, communicate, and educate with the best educators in the world right here on Flipboard EDU Podcast. Welcome back, Flipboard fam. This is your favorite coach, Coach Jeffrey, and I have another amazing guest here tonight. I have Mr. Sherman Batiste. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me, man. I'm honored to be here.
Yes, great. So, my brother, let's tell our listening audience a little bit about yourself.
Let's say I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana. I moved to Texas in 2005 after Hurricane Katrina. Graduated from Thurgood Marshall High School. I attended college at Texas A&M Kingsville in South Texas. Go Hogs. And after that, man, after I played football in college, after my playing career, man, I had a short stint in corporate America. And then I became a high school teacher and a football coach, basketball and track.
Okay. So all of your time is taken up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. All right, my man. So I want to talk to you, first of all, about your experience from Louisiana coming over through Hurricane Katrina. And if you can just walk our listening audience about what you went through as a young man and how you made it and to where you are.
Hurricane Katrina, I would say it was probably one of the most trying times of my life, and definitely of my young life. I remember getting to Texas, man. I still remember the date leaving. We left early enough. We know we wasn't like caught in the storm or had to be pulled off a roof or anything like that. But it took us 22 hours to get to Houston in a car in my mom's 1999 Pontiac Sunfire that kept cutting off every 50 miles. So we ended up getting here to my aunt's house, and then I remember the storm hitting and then the levees breaking and getting the news that we couldn't go back. I mean, it was surreal at that time. I understand the severity of certain moments, like when they're happening, but everything was like happening really fast. I remember it happened maybe like on a Thursday, and then the next Wednesday, I was starting school in Houston. And I remember getting to Houston and I hated it. I hated everything about it. I hated the people. I hated the way people talked. I hated the way they dressed. I know they couldn't stand you. I was the new kid. It was a bunch of us going to Thurgood Marshall. They loved my accent. They kept asking me to repeat certain things. I remember 2 weeks, maybe like the first 2 weeks of being there, I act super macho at school, man, because it was, you don't want to be the weak guy.
Had to.
Yeah, I remember going home every day for two weeks, just crying once I got in the car. Man, I can't believe this. Like, I want to go home. I was really homesick because I had a great nucleus of friends in New Orleans. My mom would just explain to me, son, it's not a home to go back to. You're going to have to make this work. And For the most part, I would say Marshall welcomed me with open arms, man. It was a few hiccups here and there, just being a new guy. But I remember quitting football, man, as a sophomore. In New Orleans, I went to Gregory Junior High School, which was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. So we didn't play middle school football, so we had a 9th grade. So I've been playing junior varsity football since I was in the 7th grade. And then by the time my school was turning into a high school, so we were already playing varsity football as freshmen. So when I got to Texas, they were already, I think, week 2 in football, and I remember they put me on the sophomore team, and that was just like a culture shock in itself. I remember the shock of seeing my first Texas practice, or then how many people they had on the football team, and this was Marshall in his heyday. I remember we had 5 programs, 2 freshman teams, 2 JV teams, and a varsity team. So I remember really struggling in that area and struggling with the move, and I ended up quitting. And I quit like that. I played 2 games with them, and then I didn't play the rest of the season. And then I remember the day, man, that kind of changed my life. I was in the PE class. I was getting dressed to go play basketball. It was the spring. The season had already passed. We were doing spring workouts. And Coach Dennis Brantley walked through the PE locker room, and he saw me getting dressed. He's like, "Hey, what you doing in here?" He said, "I'm getting ready to go hoop, coach. I'm getting ready to hoop." And he's like, "No, you're not in here no more." And at the time, I'm thinking like, I'm not in football anymore. But he's, "Nah, you in the field house, man. You're going to play football." And then Coach Brantley, man, you ain't no telling him no. So he put me back on the team. And I went through spring, and it ended up being the greatest thing that ever happened because it allowed my acclimation period to really take place because everybody wasn't in season. The depth chart was wide open. I was able to show the talent that I have, but it made me a part of something really great. I think the difference is the team was already set when I got there originally, but everybody understood it's for a competition in spring. Everybody's competing for spots and varsity spots, and started interacting and mingling with the guys. And once that happened, the days got a little bit easier. And I remember making a name for myself in the spring in track season. End up winning the first 200 that I ran. That brought a little attention to me. And it slowly started to happen, man. And I remember my mom's car broke. And at the time I was living, when we first got here, we used to live in like FEMA apartments. They would pay you rent for you. But my zone school, I can say it now, I'm grown now. My zone school was Stratford.
Yeah, you were way up. For those we have an international audience, believe it or not. And so Stratford is probably about 25 to 30 miles outside of where you're from. And it's a different clientele of people that live over there as well. And so Marshall High School is a predominantly African-American high school in Fort Bend ISD on the east side. And Stratford is a more well-to-do school. I think about that time they had Andrew Luck as quarterback. Holla at your boy. I was a real coach, cuz I tried to tell you.
Andrew Luck was the quarterback over there, man. Marshall had such a culture where it didn't matter who it was, what kind of glitz and glamour program, we felt like we could beat you.
Yeah.
And then I missed 2 weeks of school. This is a very pivotal time. I remember getting all these calls from school, and it was a real struggle, man. It was stressing my mom out real bad because there's nothing she could do getting me to school way over there, and we actually thought about switching schools. And I remember Coach Brantley calling to check on me. So for about the next week, he would send somebody on the coaching staff to pick me up from way out there in the morning to the school. And that became such a burden, man. And I remember that lasted about a week. And a Sunday, we got a knock on the door, and it was Coach Brantley. And he asked me, "Where's your mom?" And I said in there, he said, "Man, you go in the room, let me talk to your mom for a minute." And they had a conversation, and they brought me back in the room, and he said, "All right, look, this is what's going to happen." It was never what you think about this or anything like that. This is what's going to happen, man. You're going to go to school from my house during the week, and I'm going to drop you back off on the weekend. So Monday through Friday, I'll pick you up on Sunday. Monday through Friday, you'll go to school. You'll come see mom on the weekend. I'll pick you up again Sunday, right? And he's the head football coach at this time. He doesn't have 300 kids in the program, but he found the time to do it for me. But his son is a quarterback. So we built a great bond. He's still my best friend to this day. We say how things go full circle. So this is my junior year. I lived with Coach Brantley my junior and senior year, even when the car got fixed. This is like my father figure He kept his hands on me like the whole time. Getting a scholarship, I remember I wasn't the greatest of students. I remember having a real bout with at the time it was tests.
Tax test.
I passed the tax test my senior year. It was a real thing where he was just like, man, I'm going to give you every opportunity you can to make something of yourself. I really believe in you. So I was going to school from him. So needless to say, my grades were flawless because Coach Brantley, you're going to pass, you're living in his house. I just remember it being like home from day one. I was in the dishwashing rotation on Wednesdays. That was my no house guest. And end up graduating, man, and getting a scholarship to A&M Kingsville. I had a great career down there. And after I got done playing, I spent some time in the car business. I was really good at selling cars, man. I sold cars for, I want to say 13 months. I won Salesman of the Month 9 out of those 13 months. It was talks about finance school and things like that. It was trying to move me into management in the car business. And I ended up leaving to go to oil and gas, man. I was just trying to really motivated on making money. And then I got into oil and gas as well. I worked for Stage 3 separations. I was working hitches 21 and 7, 21 days on the rig, 7 off the rig. And at the time I had 2 small kids. So it just wasn't a life really built for me. And the same guy that changed my life in high school is the same guy. And that's the thing that I really feel like it is. That's the kind of coach that I strive to be, because all I did was make a phone call to him. He always promised me if I wanted to coach, if I wanted to get into, he'll help me. And a year later, man, he hired me. I got my first coaching job, my first teaching job at Worthing High School in HISD. Oh, yeah. And that was like teaching boot camp. Right there. Yeah. That was you make it through this one, okay, you really want to be a teacher.
Worthing High School, for those of you who don't know, is on the, I don't want to say south side. Is it the south side? Yeah, Sunnyside, Texas. And Worthing, see, I got my feet wet at the good old Jefferson Davis High School on the north side. So Worthing High School is predominantly African-American school in a tough neighborhood. And those kids have a lot of challenges. And there's a new teacher coming in that is a very good place to learn what to do and what not to do, how to talk to children, how to motivate them. And my hat goes off to anybody that's working at Worthing. As a matter of fact, the principal at Worthing, who was the principal when you...
At the time, it was Dwayne Clark.
Dwayne Clark. Okay. So I used to coach. I used to coach against good old Dwayne Clark. He, as a matter of fact, he worked over with us for a little bit on his first principal job. It's a small world, Mr.
He's a great guy.
Yeah.
But I remember he gave me my first opportunity to teach, and it was filled with trial and error. But by the time I got done at Worthing, man, they were asking me to stay. It was a beautiful relationship, but I knew what the ultimate goal was. And the following year, Coach Brantley was able to get me over to Elkins. I started my teaching and coaching career. When I was at Worthing, I just taught. And it did really well. It was real good for me, especially in the position that I'm in now. I really do believe that particular year, being in that environment, is what made me the teacher that I am today, because they were like on Title I, like level 5, whatever the first level is before they closed the school.
Yeah. School improvement. Yeah. I'm sorry. Let me explain that just for the people who don't understand, is that when a school, because of the standardized testing, and Mr. alluded to this earlier, we have these state standardized tests. And if you don't get a certain number of students passing the test, then there are certain measures that have to be taken. First, the faculty, the principal is replaced and the faculty is replaced. Then you get to the point to where your school can almost be taken over by TEA, the Texas Education Agency, simply because not enough students are passing, and there's a whole bunch of rigor with lesson plans that has to be done and a whole bunch of different things that you have to do in order to get students to pass the standardized testing. So Mr. Beck was saying basically that's where his school was, at the very last level. And that's a stressful environment to also teach in as well.
I was observed 37 times in that year. And I used to tell veteran teachers all the time, because when you're a new teacher, everything comes with a small amount of hazing. Especially when I got to Elkins. And I remember one of the teachers that had been teaching 20 plus years asked me, what are you going to bring to the table? Or am I nervous? Or something like that, man. And I remember asking, I was like, hey, man, you ever been observed by TEA? And they were like, oh, no, never. I've never seen. I said, I've been observed by him 6 times. 13 people in the classroom stuffed around all along the walls of the classroom. It was a very nerve-wracking thing at the time.
Yeah.
But then you had regular campus walks from the district, your own campus walks, and you had the state representatives to come. I remember in that same year, we got a new superintendent. He got hired on a Thursday or Tuesday. Got hired on a Tuesday. He was in my class on Thursday.
Was that Terry Greer? Was that?
Man, I don't want to say the wrong person, but it was 2016. So
Okay.
whoever the guy that they hired in 2016.
Yeah.
But I just remember just thinking, oh, this is nuts.
He didn't stay long. He left because I left. He left and he didn't stay long. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
So I just remember having a great group of kids, the nucleus of kids that were there. It was things going on at Worthing, man, that like under normal circumstances, the teachers would never know goes on. Like when you first start school and they do some kind of roundup where they making kids go to school that normally after a certain date, they stop coming.
Yeah.
It was something like that going on. They doing rosters. And I remember one of the veteran teachers is after I think it was like October.
They hit you with that snapshot. They ain't going to be here no more.
Snapshot. I can't even remember. Like, hey man, after the first snapshot, after October, things get leveled off. Because it's a mixture of kids like that absolutely want to be there. And it's a mixture of kids that they're making be there until such time. It was way different, man, but it made me a great teacher because you have to start with a discipline level, classroom management. Like it's these skills of being a teacher are really fine-tuned in that way. And that's what the biggest lesson that I learned at Worthing. The biggest lesson was that, okay, you're a talented individual and it's a certain part of this job that it takes talent to do. However, teaching is a skill and you have to have a skill set and certain tools to be able to be successful in a classroom. And if you didn't have it in this environment, anything could happen. I literally mean anything could happen. I really do. I thank God at the time I didn't, but I really thank God for that specific situation of being done. Cause I thought it was just like, once you brand new, you learn it a certain way. You think it's like this everywhere. So when I moved to Elkins, just the simple fact that you didn't have to tell the kids to get to class on time. The hallway was clear in 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Or if I say, hey, man, like I always start off the same way. So I'll tell you a funny story, man. So when I learned, like Mr. Clark is a great mentor. So he gave me all these strategies like, hey, this is how you get things done. You want to establish protocol in your classroom from step one. And the first thing that you do is you control where the seating is. So I would put kids in alphabetical order. And in your mind, like you do this for one or two reasons, right? Number one, you know exactly where everyone is. I remember the first time I got there. So I started Worthing 3 weeks late. Because I had to go through HR. I got hired the first week of school, as in it's already going. And then 2 weeks after that, it took that long to get through HR. So what ended up happening was they were having certain problems in the classes like that were already going. So they had a long-term sub in this one class. So they would take the kids that are like having issues in other classes and they would put them.
Yeah, you in the grease, baby. You in the grease.
Oh, so it was nuts. So by the time I got there, like I think of the movie Sister Act when she walked into the music room. I remember like the first day of just sitting there and I'm trying to like establish a relationship and these kids aren't listening to anything I'm saying. At the time, I'm 24 years old and they looking at me like, you knew.
Yeah, you ain't even going to be here, man. You the next new person. They've seen so many new teachers.
Yeah. So I'm telling them, hey man, get your feet off the chair, do this and this. And then it was just, I would ask things like, who is this? What is your name? They wouldn't give you
your name. Hey, dude.
Something happens. And then these kids, they run click tight. So you're not going to ask anybody else, who is this? What is his name?
Then you lucky if you got a handshake, cuz they would just be like, who this dude?
I don't know him. I had an altercation, man. I'll tell you, man. I went on the administrative leave my third day of work. It took that long. It was almost grand opening, grand closing in 3 days. I went to take a cell phone from a kid and without getting too crazy into the story. I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana, man. I'm taught to deal with conflict one way. And they from Sunnyside, Texas, and they taught to deal with conflict the exact same way. So it ended up being, I remember him saying something like, you can chill with that tough guy act, bro. And I remember telling him, oh, It's not an act, but things just escalated from there. And we had the whole little altercation and dispute, and his cousin ended up being in the class too. So that was a whole deal in itself. But I remember the situation happened without giving too much detail. And I remember going on administrative leave and being gone for a week. And everybody was asking like, man, you going to go back? After that, you going to go back? And I'm like, man, y'all must don't know me. Of course I'm going back. And I remember like in my mind, like, okay, this is going to be the environment. This is exactly what it is. This is how I'm going to carry myself. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to be somebody different when I walk in these doors. And when I got back, because of what happened, every kid was in there like, don't mess with him, bro.
It actually worked in your favor, huh? It rarely does. It rarely does. I don't advise anybody to do that, but it's a good thing that your ending turned out real good.
Absolutely, man. And it ended up being a situation that it wasn't a great thing, but I think it needed to happen. So getting back to, bro, it allowed me to reset and reintroduce myself into a situation of they knowing like, okay, this dude is about something, and he's back after what happened. So I would sit him in alphabetical order. Now I can reset to how Mr. Clark told me. So now I know I may not know your name in the first week, but I know on this road, you're a person number 13. And if seat number 13 acts out, I know exactly who it is from the road. So that was the protocol number one. And then it allowed you to take attendance more efficiently, things like that, have an accurate count of things that were happening. And then it was a struggle because I'm learning to deal with situations in the classroom. Like, man, I've had some crazy jobs, like car business. It's a slaughterhouse, man, 13, 14-hour days. Same thing with oil and gas. That's 12-hour shifts. I came in with the mindset of, I'm only going to be working from 7 o'clock to 2:45. Oh, this is going to be.
And you think you got the summers off. You think you got the
first 2 weeks. I remember coming home and telling my girl, like, I have never been this tired in my life. Like, it was everything. And I didn't understand, like, the mental capacity that it took. It's so many split-second decisions that you have to make as a teacher, all while staying on the bottom line of you have a responsibility to teach these kids something every day that they walk into your classroom. And you have an objective. And by the time they leave this classroom, no matter what happens, it can be a wrestling match, it can be 6 fights, it can be somebody turn over a desk, somebody throw up, somebody's crying because their boyfriend broke up with them or their girlfriend broke up with them. It can be anything. Even in those things, you have to navigate it to where they learn what they're supposed to learn, because each day builds on the next. Learning the skills to be able to put me back in that position. When I got to Elkins, I started off with this extremely disciplined thing. I put them in alphabetical order. I had my champs to where I'm controlling conversation, movement, everything that you can possibly think of. And I just remember going over all these rules and then looking back at my first class at Elkins, and they have this look on their face like,
we went to jail.
Just tell us what page you want us to turn it. I went week after week, bro, just waiting for something to happen. Like, it's going to happen. I think we're going to get there. Somebody's going to do something. And then I'm telling these kids, like, hey, you got homework on this day.
And they turn it in.
They dropping the homework. The day before, they pulling out planners. Because I had a pre-AP class. They pulling out planners. And what day did you say the homework? Is this homework still due on this day? And I was like, oh, this is nuts. This is stealing money at this point. And I learned, man, like, all those things were absolutely necessary because I have the ability, because no class is the same. You may have a perfect class period from first period to fourth period. And then when that fifth period comes in, it could take the right combination of kids. It's not bad kids, but though you ever just see those people that should never sit together or be together or whatever it is in any kind of professional environment, you get that concoction sometimes. Yeah. But I always have a way. I tell my kids all the way, hey, don't make me pull the reins back on this thing, because I know how to do it. And I've had to reset a couple of times. Without those days, I truly don't believe I would be the teacher that I am, because without classroom management, creating a culture for learning would be out of the window. And then the culture is what creates relationships. And that's literally my recipe, my secret to success.
Yeah. And I was going to go there because it sounds as if that you had a a coach who cared enough about your educational process to build a relationship with you. And I remember back in those days, because I was a new teacher right around the Katrina time. And so everybody was looking for athletes. If you remember back, they would go to the Astrodome, coaches would come and get people to live with them. And then after the next year, these families would like almost be out because the kids wouldn't gel with the other kids in the neighborhood. And it was a big Houston versus Louisiana type situation. Yes. A lot of that going on. But what's amazing to me, it's not amazing, but it's good that someone cared enough about you to mentor you and to show you. And I don't know your situation, but I think that you learned a lot from him for what you were saying. That was your father figure. And without people like that, education can't go any further for us. We need people to come in and step in for us, no matter the color, because when you see somebody in need, if you're an educator, like you talked about, getting into altercation with a student and then risking coming back, because not only do you have to save face, okay, now you have to deal with administration going to treat you differently. And I know Dwayne Clark. Dwayne wasn't going to be playing with you. Better not raise your eyebrows at a kid after that. So I'm just saying like that. I know that they went to that. I know you went through that process. That's just a good thing, man. I'm very proud for you. I'm very proud for you.
It's the same guy, man, that we talk about, Coach Brownlee. I coach with him every day, man. That's the point that I wanted to make. The guy, I didn't believe I would as a young man until he told me that I could. The vision became clear through the eyes of the expectation that was set by him. And still to this day, man, I coach with him. It's the same. We used to watch film on Thursdays before games at his house. I play receiver. His son was the starting quarterback. And this is what on Saturdays before or Thursdays before we play a game or Fridays after we play the game. We've been doing this stuff since we were 15 years old. Since me and his son was 15 years old. So after a game, when we up at the school on Saturday, breaking down film and stuff like that, it's literally just the family. We got the same roles that we had when we was 15 years old. Yes. We know exactly when he's coming in to the room. Sometimes we make jokes, man. We write on our notepads all the things that he's going to say because he locks himself in the room and he watches the film and we watch it together. And we're like, okay, he's going to bring up play number 6. And he's going to say this is what's supposed to happen. So these are the plays that he's going to put in. Yeah. And he comes in and then we just start, he'll start on the board and we just check it out. Like, told you. It's a beautiful thing, man. But for a person to be that invested in you as a kid and foster you all the way through a high school graduation and then 2 college graduation, but ultimately use his influence to get you a job. And because of that relationship, I'm able to take care of my own family. Because I have 2 sons and my sons call him Pops, his grandfather. So to me, like this job, this thing that I call being a teacher, educator, or football coach, it's done through the eyes of I know exactly what somebody did for me and I know how important this role is. So that's why my walk is a little bit different than a lot of folks. I
feel you on that, man. And so you are I really don't like to advertise school districts, and we talked about that, but you are the Fort Bend Teacher of the Year, correct? 26 high schools, they can only find Mr. Coach Batiste.
The one and only, man. Yeah. I thought it was rigged too, man. I said, they're giving it to me. But I won it for the campus in November or so. I won it for the campus, and it felt great to be recognized by the peers, and then moved on to the district level and ended up winning it for the district as well. I mean, it's surreal. It's surreal to me because quite honestly, when people ask me all the time, like how it feels, it's like an out-of-body experience. But it's funny to me because I get a bunch of recognition for things that I have been doing all along. So that's why I tell my kids greatness is not like these major things that happen. It's a bunch of little bitty things done consistently. And all of a sudden, somebody notices, like, hey, this dude is pretty consistent in this thing. Or let me ask him this question. And then the most impact that I've had is helping other teachers. Because I remember my experience. I know what it's like to be walking into that classroom on the first day. Because I'll tell you, I was scared out of my mind. I'm telling you, they opened that door and HISD, it ain't no introduction or nothing like that. It was, this is your new teacher? See you in 90 minutes.
Hey, man, some of my best times was teaching and coaching over it in the hood, man. I really miss the relationships that I was able to. I learned how to, and I had great colleagues that also taught me how to teach. I was the varsity head basketball coach, and I was the JV head coach for a time, and I coached the defensive line on the varsity.
Okay, I think you did coach our blue chip game, man, because the other guy that did it, the receiver coach from Jeff Davis, was a guy with dreadlocks. That is Coach Floyd. And Mr. Floyd is now the assistant principal at George Ranch High School. Qantas Floyd. Shout out to Qantas Floyd. Wow. Yes. It's a small world. So for those of you who don't know, I try not to brag on my coaching career, although I'm an assistant principal and I do call myself Coach Jeffrey. Holla at your boy. But I coached Sherman in an all-star game when he was in high school, which was crazy. So as we were talking, I was like, I think I might have coached the game you played. I don't know. But yeah, man, that's a small world, man. It's crazy. Yeah. Beautiful thing though, man. Yeah. It all comes full circle.
Yeah. I'm very proud for you, sir. And so we have a mutual friend, and I don't want to discount my homeboy who brought you to my attention. That's my homeboy, Mr. Henry.
Absolutely. Man, I'll tell you, man, I do want to take the time to shine light on him. Mr. Henry is another beautiful human, man, that took a liking to me. I was Mr. Henry's office aide in high school as a senior. And me and him built a relationship through that role. He would come to watch me play football, and we would talk about it. He would critique my game a little bit, and then we built a really good relationship. And he was one of the first people that I actually talked about, like, what was going on, like, inside my head with the transition, things that I was dealing with outside of the classroom or outside of football, with my home life. And he became real invested, man. I still call him dad. I still call him a dad to me to this day. I'll tell you something, man. My senior prom, man, something went wrong. My dad was supposed to do something. I can't remember. I don't want to put that on him, man. I don't even remember exactly what it is. But some funds for prom was not exchanged that was supposed to be. And my mama just couldn't do it, man. And I remember telling him the story of it, and he didn't reply. He didn't respond. He was like, man, everything gonna work out. It's going to be good. You're going to be all right. And my tuxedo and the car that I drove to prom, he handled all of that for me, man. And he came to at least 2 games while I was in college. We maintained a relationship all the way through my high school days, all the way through college, and even to this day, man. So I love him, man.
Great human being, and can cook man. That dude can cook. That brother can cook. Oh man, yeah. I met him as a retired. I didn't know he was an administrator when I met him. Not that I needed to know, but he never. Some people are retired administrators and have this air about themselves. I never sensed that from Mr. Henry. He just walking around as an aide, and he was at Lander Lane, and whatever the principal at the time was Dr. Blake, and whatever Dr. Blake needed, we were going to do. And so every now and then, Mr. Henry would bring food, and it was so good that I would love going over there. And so Dr. Blake would call me and be like, hey, Mr. Henry cooking today. You gonna come over to our school? Yeah, I'm coming over. Man, listen, Mr. Henry can cook a spider web.
Yeah.
It'll be good.
He's such a great guy to be around.
Yes.
Genuine to be around. It doesn't matter what you have going on. Yeah. He's going to make you feel like it's the best thing in the world. So he's a great guy, man. I can't speak enough about him.
Yeah. Shout out to Sidney Henry. All right, man. That concludes our show, man. I want to get some information from you. Where can our listening audience find you at if they want to reach out to you and have them come speak to teachers or anything like that?
Man, you can just reach out to me on my normal work email is Sherman.Batiste at Fort Bend ISD. I'm also on Facebook. It's Sherman Batiste. I'm Sherman, Mr. Fort Bend ISD. A shameless plug right there, Mr. Fort Bend ISD. And then my normal name on Instagram as well.
Okay, gotcha. And I want to read this real quick. Restream is a live video broadcast that allows you to broadcast to 30 plus social networks at the same time. With multiple broadcasts on different platforms, Restream has enabled millions of people around the world with the ability to engage and monetize their audiences. Choose from classics like Twitch or Facebook Live, or go ahead and experiment with the new streaming services such as YouNow and Twitter Moments for even greater chances that your message will be seen by whoever wants it. So give Restream a try today and start your free trial. Hey, Mr. Batiste, Coach. Hey, congratulations, my brother, and thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, man. It was an honor.
Are you looking for a podcast about education? Flipboard EDU Podcast is a great podcast that focuses on digital, remote, and future learning. We will explore how to use Flipboard in education and how it can enhance instruction. You'll hear from teachers, students, and experts who are using this amazing tool in their classrooms. It's not just an educational resource, but also a community of people who want to share ideas with one another. Hey, join our community today. Share your stories, ask questions, or even submit content for us to feature on the show. We want everyone involved in this conversation so we all can learn together as we move into the future of education. This is your favorite coach, Coach Jeffrey, and I look forward to you becoming a part of the Flipboard family. Click here now to follow our podcast. Until next time, family. Welcome to Flip Tips. Today's Flip Tip is how to get started with Flipboard. Very simple. I want to thank Jeanette Spire and Terry Porter for coming up with our Flip Tips for today. The first thing you want to do is download the app for your Android or iOS device. Second thing you want to do is you want to create an account. Make sure you add a picture and complete your bio. Third thing you want to do is you want to follow topics. There are at least 34,000 topics that you can follow. Next thing you want to do is build your magazine. Navigate to the bottom of your profile icon and then select the collection options. Give your magazine a title and you've built your first magazine. I want to give a huge shout out for Terry Porter and Jeanette Spire on giving us today's Flip Tips. Flipboard fam, thanks for sticking with me on this episode. I want to thank Mr. Sherman Batiste for talking with us on this episode about his journey to becoming the Teacher of the Year. You can read more about this episode and other educators on the Educators blog on Flipboard.com. I want to give another huge shout out to Aileen Laylor and Crystal Vanderboom for the editorials on the Flipped EDU Educators blog. Remember to follow our Flipboard EDU magazine on Flipboard.com. So please follow and share our podcast with an educator or colleague. Our podcast is available globally and everywhere you listen to podcasts for free. So until next time, family.